I think the first part has been documented pretty well in a lot of blogs.
Yeah.
And that trend that you're asking about is this notion that it is really, really cheap now to start a software company.
Mm-hmm.
And I speak specifically software because that's
Yeah.
primarily my background, et cetera. But even when I started at Number One about 10 years ago, and certainly when Ann and John started their first fund, the amount of capital that was needed to do a software company was several $1,000,000. So your A round was typically $4 or $5 million.
Yep.
And that was just kind of the cost of entry in order to write the software, get the development tools, hire the engineers, and all of these things, and then deploy it on a server inside behind somebody's firewall. And it was quite a heavy-duty task just to get started. Fast forward 10 years, and now today we're at this point where the cost of starting a software company, whether it's software application that sits on your mobile phone or even something that sits on a server, is effectively zero.
Yeah, basically, right? That's a good way of putting it.
If you're a coder, you can sit down.
Right.
In fact, just before this meeting, I sat down with a guy who's leaving his company. He's a fantastic CTO, and
Mm-hmm.
he's been on the enterprise side for a long time. And I said, "What are you doing now?" And he described his application, and he's saying he's putting it together in his living room. Right? I mean, this is not anything that requires a lot of money to get started. So that's been the big sea change for both investors and for entrepreneurs, is the cost of getting started in the software world is now diminished down to practically zero. So, but that has implications. And people will say to you, they'll say, well, that's great. That means, if you're an entrepreneur, it's a great time to be an entrepreneur, all those kinds of things, and they're true. And we see that on the investor side now as well, which is you don't need, your Series A doesn't have to be this big $4 or $5 million round. You can do seed investing, which is why we've seen the rise of angel investing in the past few years. And accelerators and incubators and all of these things, because for a little bit of money you can really help entrepreneurs get to the next level very effectively, cost effectively. But the downside of all of this is that while the cost of getting started has reduced, that means there's increased competition, and so the cost of actually differentiating and getting to market has increased.
Yeah.
And so the overall cost of actually getting your product out there is probably still $4 or $5 million at the end of the day. It's just that the initial step is very small, and then that second step is more expensive than it used to be. And so the entrepreneurs out there, what they have to do is, yes, they have to get the product out, they have to do all of that, but now they got to focus on how do we execute, and that sales execution and the ability to drive happy customers and all of these kinds of things, that the execution piece once the product is out there is really, really critical now, way more than it's ever been.
Interesting. And then fundamentally, how has it changed as far as looking at deals? Like when you look at deals now, so as the group, explain a little bit how the group does investing, what stage, and what size deals, and what the companies look like that you look at today.
Sure. So TIE Angels, so TIE itself, for viewers who aren't familiar, is a global nonprofit that supports entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. And so we have chapters around the world. We have 60 plus chapters around the world. We have Silicon Valley is where the organization started. This is still headquarters as far as all the chapters are concerned. And we put on programs, events. For example, the weekend of March 17th, that Friday, Saturday, we have our big TIECon that happens every year. It's our annual flagship event. We get 4,000 people from around the world that come to this thing. It's the largest entrepreneurs conference in the world.
Wow.
It's Worth Magazine put it right up there with conferences like TED and World Economic Forum and so on as one of the 10 best conferences to go to. So it's a fantastic organization. But a couple of years ago, we realized that some of our senior members, who we call charter members, were doing angel investing anyway. So we said, why don't we put them together and create a forum so that we can invest together and look at companies together and have a little momentum rather than just doing it as individuals. So that's how TIE Angels got started back in 2010. And because our backgrounds are primarily enterprise, that's what we tend to invest in as well.